And we are live. This is Addy Ads, Atticus Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. This is Across the Pond with your host, Addy Ads, and I am here once again, joined by my favorite prison guard from Yorkshire, Mr. Sam Samworth. Sam, how are you doing today?
All right, lad.
I see you're getting a little tan on there.
Yeah, we've had some nice weather. Stay at home,
Yeah.
bit of gardening, a lot of dog walking.
Yeah, definitely. It's been quite nice here too recently, with the exception of this morning as it is raining and I did get a little wet on my way to the grocery store this morning, but that is quite all right. And let's just talk. Well, let's do a quick update first on what if there even is an update. I don't know. Has any changes come about in Yorkshire as far as the pandemic situation, Sam?
Um, Nationally, the government made an announcement, and everyone went crazy and melted down, saying the message was unclear. Basically, still social distancing. It's acceptable to go out a bit more now, bit more exercise. If you want to go to the park, meet your friends for a chat and social distance, then carry on. You're going to try and get some people to work. Obviously, if it's safe to do so, social distancing, masks, whatever's needed. But like I say, everyone goes crazy. The media goes crazy. Everyone on Twitter's like putting all the little memes out and that.
Yeah.
Just get over yourselves. We're not stupid. So
Yeah, as long as the meme is good and makes me laugh, I don't complain, but that's pretty rare. But let's go into your book a bit, Sam. I was just going into your next chapter here, and you mention a prisoner, and the chapter is chapter 12. It's
yeah,
called I Want to Be Adored.
yeah.
And you talk about Jonathan Vass, and you're
Oh
basically
yeah.
open up talking about anti-psychotics and how sometimes that those medicines they don't work for everybody. Do you want to go into that a bit? Because and you do mention Thomas Riley as well, which is actually the guy you opened up the book with as
Yeah,
well.
Thomas Riley. That's an alias. That's
Mhm.
where sometimes I get a bit thrown. And obviously, I know who he is because he's at the beginning of the book.
Mm.
But sometimes, when people say, "What about this?" I have to sort of think who we're talking about. But so what? Do you want to talk about Jonathan Vass, or do you
Yeah,
want to talk?
what is your experience with him? And what did he
Um,
do exactly? Because he is
I'll
a
tell you
more
what.
well-known prisoner, as I understand.
He was quite high profile at the time. He was a bodybuilder. He was seeing at one point and had a young child to a lovely young nurse. Compared to her, he was a big lad, a bully. They reckon he were on steroids, got roid rage, and they separated. And he was due in court. He'd actually been to court, and he was not remanded in custody. He was given bail on something like 11, 12, or 13 rape charges against this young nurse. So somebody decided that somebody who got possibly 13 rape charges against them, that they weren't going to remand them in custody. They were going to leave them out. So anyway,
And it was all against the same victim, Sam, or was there
yes,
multiple
it
victims?
was. Pretty lass, nurse, petite, who he'd got a young child to. The reason I'm happy to talk about this guy, it'll become obvious at the end. The outcome's not good, but so what happened was the thought process. This guy thought, I'm up for 13 rape charges. If I kill her, then I'll get away with it. I'm not going to have to stand trial for rape. So basically, he killed her in the grounds of the hospital in Warrington. He left her and went back, to sort of finish her off. Horrific. She was badly battered, and we don't have to go into the details. It was horrific, and what made it worse for sort of colleagues and friends and the people she worked with, they actually took her into the hospital because it was in the hospital grounds, and they at some point realized it was like their friend, their colleague, because of the amount of blood and the state. At first they didn't recognize who it was, so it was a horrific murder.
Damn.
The reason I don't mind talking about it is because her parents, obviously, I can't even imagine what's that like, losing your daughter. But what they went on to campaign, they must be very strong people, and they campaigned on her behalf, against these people who are accused of these crimes and being free or whatever. A big campaign. They appeared in the press a lot. So, they tried to sort of take something from her death and make a difference. So from that point of view, amazing people. I hope at some point that they're able to have some happiness in their life. Like I say, it must be terrible. I think she had a sister as well who was obviously devastated. So it's Jonathan Vass. Like a lot of sex offenders, high profile, he was made Cat A, and he ended up on the healthcare. And the guy was one of these. He just loved himself, really. Just a bad bully, a piece of shit, just nasty. But he was also a coward. When he was on the healthcare at first, he'd strut about like some sort of, like he was somebody. He was a narcissist, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, he got put in his place, like you would do. He was told that behave appropriately or whatever. But like I say, he was a coward. He was never confrontational with like myself or anything like that. And that's not me saying, look at me. That's me saying, yeah, he's all right, battering and pushing about some young girl. But, when it comes to someone. Anyway, yeah, exactly. The thing about these narcissists, he actually tried to he tried to get access to his child who he'd had with this young lass, actually get visitation rights and stuff like that. Thankfully, somewhere in the court system, someone saw it for what it was. And, she'll probably never know who her dad was or whatever, and never have to see him or hear about that. So, that's a good outcome. But like I said, credit to her parents who campaigned and are probably still campaigning. They did get some changes to the law, so incredibly strong and brave people. And like I say, it was a beautiful young lass, so it's a shame. It's, terrible.
Yeah, that is a shame. And when did that happen, Sam?
I would say he was actually on the prison documentary, so it'd be around about 2011, something like that.
Wow. Yeah, and go ahead, Sam.
He got 35 years to serve. For me, I don't think in fact, it won't happen in this country, but for me, we should still have the death penalty for people like him, banged to rights, a brutal murder, something like that. He's no use to society. Costs a fortune to keep them people for the next 35 years. Then, if he's in America, he'd be on death row or whatever. So there you go. So for me, if there's no doubt or anything like that, then capital punishment a better way forward.
Yeah, I think it should be used in some cases as well. I just don't understand the system in America whereby people just stay on death row for years and years and years while we pay for it.
Well, the other thing like that, you know, if you are going to say that somebody can be put to death for what they've done, do it. The cost of them sitting on death row, but it's not only that, you know, although people do evil things, it's almost torture itself, isn't it? Leaving someone that long. So I'm saying, yeah, I would be for capital punishment, but if you're going to do it, you know, in this country when we had hanging, if
mhm.
someone was sentenced to hang until death by hanging or whatever, they didn't keep him in jail for years. You know, that sentence was carried out quite quickly,
Mhm.
you know, and dealt with. And for me, if you're going to have people on death row, you're going to put people to death. Just get on with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there should be a processing period, but years and years and years, it's there's no sense to it. And yeah, I do think there has to be. I agree with you. It should be used in certain cases, but there has to be irrefutable, as you said. I think irrefutable evidence, but beyond any doubt. And like in this case, where you see someone who there's just no way that they're going to contribute to society positively, and they're only going to be, parasitic in their relationship with other people. That I think that combined with the severity of a crime, such as murder or repeated rape offenses, um, yeah, it definitely should be a strong consideration. But
I'll tell you something that comes to mind while we're talking about Jonathan Vass. Right, there was another lad at the same time was on healthcare, Polish lad. So what this lad did, and this is about inconsistency in our criminal justice system. Yeah. So Jonathan Vass, rightly so, got 35 years. Here's another thing. I don't know whether they have this in America. You know, if someone shows remorse, well, for me, the only people who, or the only reason people show remorse is because they've been caught. So if somebody murders someone and gets 35 years, when they're in court, they show remorse because they're going to do 35 years. They don't show remorse because they're sad that they've done what they've done. But in this country, you can get time knocked off. So I'm not sure whether Jonathan Vass got 5 years knocked off because he showed remorse in court. Maybe not. But I do know people who have. So their sentence might be 30 years. In court, they say they're sorry, so they get 25 years. For me, if it's a 30-year sentence, saying sorry, that doesn't help the victims or anything like that, does it? So fuck
no,
them.
yeah, no, it doesn't. And is that actually written legislation, Sam?
Oh, it
Where
happens. It happens. Our system. The reason I'm telling you about this lad, this Polish lad, yeah. So he was on at the same time as Jonathan Vass. He stabbed his wife to death. Yeah, in a domestic argument, he stabbed his wife to death. He stabbed his wife to death in front of two young children they had. I think, but those two children were under 8 years old. But he also had a 15-year-old in the house. So these kids witnessed him kill their mother. Yeah.
Jesus.
So he's on the healthcare. Now, the reason he got caught, after a period of time, say a couple of weeks, his eldest daughter said to him, you either need to go to shops or I do to get food for the kids because they were running out of food in the house. So he let her out to go to the shop. She went to the shop, alerted someone who phoned the police. They then went to the house and the body was still there, and obviously rescued these two young kids. So he was in for murdering his wife in cold blood at the same time as Jonathan Vass. Jonathan Vass got 35 years, and rightly so. The Polish lad, for keeping his kids hostage, brutally stabbing his missus to death, got 15 years. 15. 35, rightly so. Why did he get, when he come back from court, he was laughing. He was laughing. I remember asking him, what did you get? 15 years. Are you happy at that? Yeah, I'm happy. He was smiling.
Wow.
Brutally murdered a young lass, brutally murdered, 35 years, 15 years. Explain that to me, because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. And I've noticed that too, actually, Sam. The show, and I don't know if it's, I don't think it's written legislation here in the United States. I mean, I've never heard of it, but I have noticed that if a criminal or perpetrator is on trial in court, they don't show remorse or that they're sorry, or even worse, they show that they're proud of the crime, then humans are emotional creatures. We have this
Oh,
law and this system that's supposed to be objective, but it's a formality after the fact. After the crime has been passed through the lens of society's, whatever, their mores, their traditions, their values, ethics, morals, the political climate too, then it's almost like the sentence is made before the trial even happens, or before the decision is even supposed to be made, and it's just like a formality after the fact, like they already know what they're going to give. But that's another thing too I wanted to ask about, Sam, and it seems
yep.
like something that also happens here is that rape doesn't get well, I shouldn't speak on the United States here, because this country is just so weird, but on your country it's just like it doesn't make sense why rape doesn't get um the punishment that it does, on top of murder and rape getting inconsistent punishments.
I don't understand the system. It could be a lot more simple. There's too much leeway. Judges have too much power. I've told you this before, these judges let people go, make decisions, and those people aren't usually poor working class individuals. They'll be middle to upper class people, where the judge makes a decision that this person, who could go on to be a doctor who will save lives, who stabs someone, shouldn't do time. If it was Mary from the Manor, which is a rough estate in Sheffield, she's doing time because she stabbed someone while drunk. Whereas middle class lass who's going to be a doctor, she's not. That shouldn't be down to judges. Yeah. For me, it should be black and white. If you murder someone, you start somewhere. If you knock someone down in a car and kill them, right, manslaughter or whatever, then that should be maybe the starting point for murder. I don't know. But why one person who brutally murders his wife would get 15 years and somebody who brutally murders his girlfriend would get 35, why there's that massive difference, I honestly do not understand it. The classic case that I remember was two lads on the Cat A unit, yeah? When I was at Forest Bank in the private sector, these lads were both 18, 19, and a lot of them lads who were in prison, I remember, went on to become armed robbers. When they were at Forest Bank, there was a gang of 5 lads. One of them, who was 17, and he did his first armed robbery at 13, who was successful, apart from getting caught, obviously, and made a lot of money. And all the other lads worshipped them. All the other lads were in for petty crimes. But a lot of them lads that looked at these 5 who were doing armed robberies went on to be armed robbers. So, that in prison is terrible. However, both these lads ended up on Cat A unit. So it was both second offence, armed robbery. They both went armed. Yeah. The circumstances were the same, but they were separate. They've done their armed robberies. This lad here is laughing. He's going to a court in Manchester with a judge who is well known for giving light sentences. This lad here is terrified because he's going to a court where the judge is known to give stiff sentences. They both went within a week. This lad here got 8 years. This lad got 15. Yeah.
Wow. Exact same crime.
You see them inconsistencies regularly. There should be no judges should not be allowed to make decisions or lead a jury or knock time off sentences or anything else. If you murder someone intentionally, then there's got to be a starting point, and it needs to be high. You need to set the bar high. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen though. So, the whole system needs overhauling. At the minute, it's just, the problem is the victim. I'm sure they don't understand.
Yeah.
If you see the guy who's murdered your daughter get 35 years, you're still going to be grieving, but you think, yeah, your life's done. You imagine 15 years. No, it's all wrong, mate. It needs sorting.
It reminds me of, this is a really light example, but like in school, you could take the exact same class, but it matters who your teacher is in terms of, you give the same effort, same
Oh
answers,
yeah,
and you'll get two
yeah,
different grades if you have two
yeah,
different teachers.
yeah.
And it's the same thing, it seems, in terms of the judges. And that's so twisted because that's the difference between 7 or 8 years of that kid's life. And it was something completely out of his control. I mean, the crime was his responsibility, of course, but after that fact, after he's been arrested, he's not in control of anything. So
No.
the fact that it's just a whim, I don't know where, I'm guessing it was where the crime was committed, determined that, or whatever it is, you're at the whims of someone who's, their personality and their worldview and their experiences, which are none of which are objective, that are all subjective. That's going to shape
Well,
that decision.
younger people get lighter sentences as well. I remember one lad they had on Cat A unit. He basically walked up, killed someone in cold-blooded murder, shot him point blank range. Yeah, I think he got 20 years.
Wow.
This weren't an accident. It was cold-blooded because he was young. If it had been sort of my age, I would imagine it'd have got 25, 30 years, maybe more. But because people look and they call them children,
Yeah.
we need
They
to look
call them
after
children when they're killing people, but not when they're getting molested by politicians.
Well, yeah, you're probably right.
But this makes me think of, it was actually in your country, Sam, and maybe you were talking about this, but this, and let me see if I can pull it up. This blonde girl who was, I think, a med student, and I think she
was.
stabbed her boyfriend.
Yeah, in the head with a knife.
And nothing happened, like, at all.
No.
Like, she didn't get in trouble at all. And
No.
I was like, I just couldn't believe it. And just being in, and this happened, I think, when I was in college, Sam, and I just the climate and the political talk during that time, it was so just male bashing, and really, I'm all for equality of opportunity for the sexes and all the races too.
Yeah, of
But
course.
not, like, it's something we've talked about before, Sam, and I think you agree with me with the affirmative action and diversity hires and quota filling, that it's just not conducive for long-term success, and that a backlash will inevitably come from that. But when I saw that article, I was like, wow, man, I have to share this, because generally speaking, I would just keep my mouth shut about political stuff. And it was because I just cared too much what people thought about me. But at that point, I was like, yo, man, I have to share this. Like, does no one
Well,
else think this is absurd?
these
Like,
things need to be talked about.
exactly, 100%.
Whatever
And
court,
the fact that a woman can stab somebody and nothing will happen is mind-blowing. And
yeah, but that
nobody...
decision was made by the judge, nobody else. The
Mhm.
judge made that decision. That shouldn't be his decision. Preside over the court, make sure, people follow procedure or whatever. But don't lead a jury and don't make decisions. Don't give them that power. Why? She should be doing time. If her career's done, don't drink, don't stab your boyfriend in the head. At the end of the day, let's face it, we can all cry afterwards. She did the deed and walked away. Wrong. It sends out the wrong message.
Oh man, a terrible precedent. Terrible precedent that if you're a woman, you can do whatever you want, or if you're blonde, or a med student, or whatever it is, or if you're rich,
Well, it is wrong, and it's happened before as well. middle class kids, middle class white kids getting off with crimes or because of who they know or whatever. Shocking.
Yeah, it's just a bad deal. But thanks for filling us in on Jonathan Vass, Sam, because yeah, I recall reading that name a long time ago, but I didn't know much
Yeah.
about it. And that article about that med student popped into my head too when you brought that up. But let's talk more about your book, if that's okay, Sam. We'll just get into it more. And what did you? Maybe you want to explain this to a certain extent about wanting to be adored with Chapter 12, and just what you mean by that, and how prison guards handle recognition, because it seems to be a very
Well,
thankless
it's not
job.
really. It's not really about that. It's about, you know, people like Jonathan Vass and you know how they are and how that affects you as well, really. But did you know that all the chapter titles in that book are songs by Manchester bands?
I did not know that, and I wouldn't have known that unless you told me, Sam. I don't think I could name one band from Manchester, unfortunately.
You've heard of Oasis?
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the chapters is "Don't Look Back in Anger." Yeah, which is a song by them. Now that weren't my idea. That was the writer. The writer was a really clever guy. So he titled all the chapters with the Manchester band songs, you know, to sort of his little bit of a contribution. Well, it weren't a little bit of a contribution. He's a fantastic writer. But I like that. And not people from Manchester, you know, people did say to me, recognized it, but a lot of people, not so much. So now, when we've done, you could go and Google all the chapter titles and find out the Manchester bands that are connected to them, can't you?
I will. I was actually walking to the grocery store this morning, Sam, and I was thinking to myself, "Wow, I really need some new music." So I will definitely check that out. And we actually have someone who commented, and just adding to what we were talking about, Sam, and she's saying to look at the Chris Watts case and how his girlfriend was never a person of interest, but she kind of aided him, and I think it's called accessory after the fact. In the States, but yeah, just another similarity
Well,
there. Yeah.
let me tell you now, there was a lad called Huntley, Ian Huntley.
Ah, yes, I have heard of
Right,
Mr.
okay.
Huntley.
You know why I don't like talking about these people? Because if there's family or friends of, you know, the poor girls that he killed, then obviously my big beef with the press is some of these high profile prisoners. Ian Brady, have you heard Ian Brady? The
Give me a
Moors
second.
murderer.
Yeah, that's him and
Right.
Myra
Well,
Hundley, right?
back in the 60s. Until he died, you know, that guy was always in the press. Now he murdered and tortured kids. And the families of them kids don't know where they were buried. That's all they want. One woman, all she wanted to know was where her son was buried. Yeah, because he buried him up on the moors above Manchester, Saddleworth Moor. But every time that guy, you know, every time he was in the press, it must have tortured him. It must have absolutely tortured him. His name never went away. If he'd have been executed, there'd have been no more talk about him in the press, would he? He wouldn't have been torturing them families. Myra Hindley was his partner, his girlfriend. You know, equally as bad. So going to Ian Huntley, the reason we went on to that, his girlfriend at the time, or alleged girlfriend, or whatever you want to say, Maxine Carr, he got a big sentence. He's in Monster Mansion in Wakefield, yeah. At one bit, and he might still be 24-hour watch. You know, he's got a prison officer, guard, cop watching him 24 hours a day, cameraed up, so he don't come to any harm and he don't harm himself, yeah. Massive cost, that. His partner, Maxine Carr, served, I believe, less than 3 years. So he's killed. She knows she's there. He's killed 2 young girls. That lass is on her bout. She comes under what you would say in the States and over here, almost like witness protection. Because she was high profile. Since she left prison, she was given a new identity. This is the partner of a murderer, given a new identity. Somebody finds out who she is, she's given a new identity and moved. The last I heard about her, she was married, you know, nice house and everything, couple of kids herself, living somewhere, you know, having a really good life because she was well known and for her safety. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
You know, for me, that's just so wrong.
Yeah, I mean, who cares? Who gives a F, you know? Like,
Exactly.
if it's
You
the
know,
victim, yeah, but
when you leave jail, give them a bus pass, tell them to keep their head down and go away.
right?
You know,
Especially
this
when they
is
kill children.
so screwed up. Them the families of the victims probably got Jack. You know, she's allowed to go and live a normal, protected, safe life somewhere. Wrong, wrong, wrong. You know, so no.
Yeah, I don't understand that backwardsness, Sam. And it seems to be a bigger problem in your country than mine, but it is getting to be more
Is
and
this
more.
one of your viewers' message I can see?
Yes, it is, Sam. They a couple are chatting in the comment section. Yeah, so I can actually pull them up.
The news that for me, the press.
Mm-hmm.
This last year, Vanda, you know, like she's saying, you give them press time. The press, you know, I've got a big downer on the press. Me, you know, it's all about fear mongering, sensationalism. You know, let them go away, rot in prison, and don't torture the families. Which again is the reason some people, you know, I didn't want to glorify him in the book. I didn't want him in the book as a selling point or anything like that. You people like Mark Bridger and Jonathan Vass, they're in the book to sort of explain what it's looking after high profile, what it's like looking after high profile prisoners like that. It affects you. You know, they're in the press. You're trying to be professional. They're not nice people, you know, and that's why the other people are anonymous. It's either about having to deal with fires and that, where you don't need to know the people that are involved, or the high profile ones. Obviously, you need a name to understand what it's like coming face to face and looking after those sort of people.
Yeah. And I don't know. I wanted to say one more thing on Huntley, if that's okay. I was just gonna say that it's unfortunate that the media does kind of blow that up, their names and stuff, and give them that infamy or fame. And it seems to be a trend that the media here is becoming more aware of that danger. But I'm just surprised that Huntley's still alive and that he hasn't been killed in prison yet.
Well, he's protected, you know, at a cost. He will be, you know, probably in a single cell, like I say, under 24 hours. He used to be. I would think not a lot has changed, you know. I don't care if people think I'm bad. I'm going to tell you about Mark Bridger. These 2 points when I smiled, and you know that the guy committed a horrendous crime. He was a smarmy, horrible, slimy bastard. That's without chucking profanities out of there. You know, he was low. He was scum. 2 things that made me smile. And people can think, you know, whatever they want. One, when he left Strangeways, bear in mind he'd been on the healthcare. That's like a small environment. So he wasn't subjected to any confrontation or threats of violence or anything else. Yeah, it was quite a safe environment for someone like him. And he thrived off it. There were some vulnerable people on there. I remember one guy we had who he didn't realize what he was in for. You know, he told him he was in for something else. And I remember, and he was quite an old guy. I remember him coming to me one day and he was crying. And he says, you know that bastard Bridger, what he's done? I says, I do know what he's done. He said, I believed him, you know. I've been nice to him. I've given him things, and he's committed a horrible crime like that. And he was, you know, super upset. So, but when he left Strangeways and the staff come from Wakefield to take him away, that was taking him out of his comfort zone. He was white. Do you know what I mean?
The old man?
It was like, you know, me, I was like, yeah, go on your way. Go and do your sentence. And you know, he was scared. You could tell he was scared. And, you know, I thought, you know, you deserve what you're going to get. And then the other time I was driving into work one day, some guy at Wakefield, this is a strange one. People might understand this, but some rapist at Wakefield made a decision that he didn't like Mark Bridger because, you know, he'd killed a young girl and he tried to cut his throat and he had a good go. He actually pinned him down and cut his throat with a bladed weapon. So, you know, if we're not going to have capital punishment, someone like Mark Bridger, for me, you know, live in fear in prison for the rest of your life. You know, and people now, and this is what rags me sometimes. When people are campaigning for better conditions in prison, I'm all for that. You know, treating people with decency, humanity, decent conditions, time out of cell, purposeful activity, you know, all these sort of things, family. I'm all for that. But, you know, people like that, you know, people talk like about people in prison like they're all good people or whatever. And they're not. Some are evil, some are really bad people. So, you know, if Mark Bridger lives because his whole life, which means he'll never get out, if he lives another 100 years in prison, then so be it, you know. And they're my feelings on it, really.
That old man, how old was he? And do you remember what crime he did?
Who's that?
The man that you said came to you.
Brady.
Mm.
I'm not sure how well if he committed his crimes in the 60s and he only died recently.
Oh yeah, he's got to be what, 70s,
80s, maybe
80s?
70s, 80s, something like that. But his thing was control. He never admitted where he buried them kids, you know. And the mother of one of them kids died not long ago, and all she ever wanted to know, so she could perhaps go and put flowers down, was where he buried the kids, and he always kept that, you know. He tempted people, tempted the press, you know. You know, if I get this, I'll do this. He was one of them. He was still manipulative until he died. So
And
yeah,
that was
you know, he'd
Brady,
torture
right,
people.
Sam?
Say that again, mate.
That was Brady?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was the one that came to you about Bridger.
No.
He was okay. The old man that came to you.
Oh no, the old man that come to me. He was getting a bit of Alzheimer's, stroke, dementia. Yeah. A lot of people couldn't be bothered with him in prison because he was quite mithersome. However, you know, I remember it's upset me because the guy, you know, he said, I've trusted him. I've given him stuff, you know, from my canteen. Perhaps, you know, they don't have a lot of stuff, these people. But he was proper heartbroken because Bridger had told him he was in for something else. And when he found out he'd committed that horrendous crime, you know, it broke him, really. He was in pieces. He was a different person after that. Wow. So, you know, that's like the manipulation, and, you know, they're just slimy, horrible people. So,
yeah.
And unless you work with them, you know,
you don't
like
really
I said.
know. Yeah. And just speaking on that, if you don't come in contact with it, or interact with those types of people, it's hard to conceptualize and understand that type of energy exists in the world. And I think that's one problem that a lot of young people in this country have, is that they have it and have had it so good that they don't understand that there is dark energy in the world that cannot really be understood rationally. And I think because of that, it scares people, and they try not to think about it or try not to comprehend it, especially young people.
Probably, these things from your childhood, I'm sure you've experienced them, that might not have been happy, just incidents, and they might drift into your memory now and again. It happens to me, and then you think, wow, that's 50 years ago. I'm glad it's gone, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
The other flip side of people like Mark Bridger and Jonathan Vass that people don't see is some people are taken in by them within the prison system.
You mean workers?
Yeah, of course. Civilians, some staff, some prison officers. It's
Isn't that fascinating, Sam?
for somebody like me, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
From day one when he landed, bang
Mm-hmm.
to rights. My first meeting with him, I knew straight away he committed a horrendous crime. He was guilty, bang to rights.
Yeah.
I knew that. And then these people who go and visit him while he's in his cell, and they'll come and see you. Or can you go and see Mark? He's a bit upset because he's not going to see his dog again. Or if he gets a big sentence, his mum and dad might die while he's in prison. And I'm thinking,
you heard
you
this
evil
report.
bastard. Yeah. And that makes it worse. You do get it. These people, there was prison officers that were taken and would sit and listen to his bullshit and that. But also people, you can see people like psychologists and that. It's almost like something on their CV, something to talk about at the dinner party. Oh, we spoke to Mark Bridger today or something like that. It just makes me sick to the pit of my stomach, honestly.
That's the celebritizing of villains. Yeah, is definitely sickening. What I was commenting on, as far as the fascinating part, is that sort of malignant person's ability to seduce people, even people who are essentially their captors, and who know what he's done, who knows the crimes that he's done. And despite that, he's still able to cast a spell on him. And I just think that is fascinating. Like, I don't think it's a good thing, but it's just
not.
how, like, how does it work?
I'll give you a couple of other examples. You see, so this makes it worse for me. You're dealing with a slime ball every day. Me, always professional. We always used to use first names like, okay, Mark, do you want a shower? Every day, same thing. Can I have a shower? In my head, I'm thinking, I just want to punch your fucking face in. Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. Yeah. Then you get the people who are like, oh, Mark's a bit upset today and that.
Mm.
And then let me tell you something else about Mark Bridger. He's the only prisoner I've known who got counselling before his sentence. He was actually having counselling. This is someone who's murdered a young girl. Believe me, I've seen hundreds of prisoners who need counselling. Things that's happened in the past life, things that put them on the road to criminality. They don't get a look in. He also had psychological input before he was sentenced. Now, psychologists in prison usually work with people on special units, like your terrorists, things like this. Yeah. So he's got a psychologist sniffing around him and somebody giving him counselling. This is before he went to trial. The other thing about Mark Bridger that people never saw and would never understand, a lot of these people, when they realise they're in the shit, they try and play the mental health card. So this guy who's been with a few months suddenly starts acting like he's a bit stupid. And you know what? Again, you look round and in your head you're thinking, I'm going to break your nose, and there'll be some psychiatrist or doctor saying, well, what about this, Mark? And you're thinking, please tell me you're not taking this in. let me break his nose, that sort of thing. Now, people who might get the wrong idea about me, you know, I didn't go around breaking anyone's nose. However, I was always professional, but sometimes I thought, particularly around him. So you
Mhm.
see now he's a slime ball. You know he's guilty. You've got people almost idolizing him. He's getting special treatment and all them things. I hated him,
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
My friend KK, who's a nurse, hated him. She said once she'd left the prison service, she never realized how much he got under her skin. But it's the whole package. It's
Yeah.
how other people treat people like that as well. You know.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's interesting. Like you don't know how much something is affecting you day to day until you remove it. And yeah, that's wow. That's interesting that she noticed that. And yeah, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to be in a room with someone like that. Because I saw this story that Pepsi told on Sean's channel, and he was talking about um the guy that killed Lucy McHugh. Is that her name? Lucy, what's her name?
I don't know. You tell me.
Give me one sec. I'll look it up. I think it's Lucy McHugh. I can't remember, but he came into Lucy McHugh murder. Yeah, yeah. So she was 13, found dead about 24 hours after going missing in a
Yeah.
woodland, and this was somewhere in England. But um, yeah, so Pepsi was in. He was a listener, I guess. And I don't. Do you guys have had like prison listeners on Fourth?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that in a second because I'm interested to know about the differences. But he was a listener, and um, it was him and his friend. And apparently, this dude came in the room, and he just describes the energy change. And he said he's never experienced, and he doesn't think he ever will experience that again. But just the kind of the darkness or just the huge energy change that happened um, when that guy came in the room, and he said that he had been there, so the guards had known him a while, Pepsi that is, and the guards left, and they told Pepsi like, I don't trust myself in the same room with him. So the guards left, and he was just saying how absurd it was that all these guards just forgot that this the most wanted VIP suspect at the time is just in this room. So he thought that was a little um, coincidental, but
Yeah. A
yeah, it just
little
made me think
sus.
of that effect that those types of people can have on regular people, and how that is something you
Definitely.
don't forget. Um, but as far as listeners, how what is your knowledge of them? Because from what Pepsi told me, he said that it's hard to become one.
Yeah, it is.
Most of them are snitches, but
Yep.
there are a select few, the guys who are there a long time, who are quality.
Right.
So
Let me tell you.
yeah, what's
So
your
to
knowledge?
be a listener, you know, you apply to be a listener. Anyone can apply to be a listener. It's when they're doing the training and that, and they have listener meetings. You know, they update them and things like this. It's the only place in the prison where you will get sex offenders mixing with normal prisoners. Because obviously on a sex offender wing, they have listeners as well. So they do the training together, not separate. Now, people won't necessarily know what other people's offences are when they're doing the training. So you apply to be a listener, yeah? The training's done by the Samaritans. You know what the Samaritans are?
Is that the same thing as a listener?
Um, pretty much, you know, there's a phone number. I could phone up now after getting off with you because you've like driven me to this. Where I'm not joking about. It's not a thing to joke about. But
Mm,
like, if you're having suicidal thoughts or thoughts
mm.
of harming yourself, you can phone the Samaritans 24 hours a day and speak to someone. So the Samaritans train the listeners. Yeah. Um, it's a reasonably long course. I couldn't tell you how long it was. So once you become a listener, you know, we had a couple on healthcare which were invaluable because when we were short staffed, you know, you ain't got time to spend hours talking to someone. If we had a lad who, you know, maybe there were a lot of people who were mentally unwell and that. I go and get one of our listeners and they'd spend an hour, 2 hours talking someday, which would give us a break. You know, they were invaluable there. There were some good listeners at Strangeways. Unfortunately, some of the people that get them jobs were, like you say, sort of, you know, not the sort of prisoners that I might pick or whatever. I once had the prison and the Samaritans try and force 2 listeners onto me because we didn't need 2 on healthcare. Sometimes we had 1 and sometimes we had none. Yeah, but the lads, the cleaners, the orderlies I had were always good anyway. So they did a good job. They go and chat to someone if they were upset or whatever. So, but they once tried to force 2 listeners onto me, and I was having none of it. You know, the 2 people were not the sort of people we'd want on healthcare, and you know, we just basically told them to do one. So, listener's job. You've got someone who's a bit suicidal, might want to speak to a listener. If they were 2 cell occupancy, if they shared a cell, you could take their cellmate out or take them out and put them in a room with the listener for a bit. If they were single cell, that listener should not be left in a cell with them on their own. If you're in a single cell, it's because someone's done a risk assessment on you. Yeah. But basically, they're there, you know, so someone can pour their heart out if they've had a Dear John letter or they're not feeling good. Believe it or believe it not, the listeners are trained not to tell staff anything. So if they go in a cell and a prisoner's thinking of hanging himself, they're not supposed to tell you. Now, all the listeners we had on healthcare and the listeners I worked with on K-Wing and knew would come and tell you what was going on. Not because they were crap listeners, because it's almost like a duty of care. So on that score, I weren't totally happy with the training or whatever. You know, if someone's thinking of harming themselves or harming someone else, then I need to know that. And I don't want the listeners telling that they need to keep that to themselves. But it is a good thing, you know. A lot of lads did do it because it looked good on your CV, you know, if you're coming up for a parole hearing or something like that. But it was a worthwhile thing. And certainly on healthcare, it was an invaluable tool. Or just having people who would stand with a prisoner at the hatch and chat to them for an hour because they were upset, which allowed you to get on with the job. So, yeah. I will tell you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
We'll tell you this. We also, on the look at you laughing. Also on the wings, we used to have a pin phone, yeah, that you could borrow. So on nights, if I was on K-Wing or any wing and someone was not having a good night, we could get somebody up to open the cell. We could give them a pin phone. They could speak directly to the Samaritans, yeah. So again, especially on nights when all the doors are locked and there's not a lot of staff, that was another useful tool. But the reason I'm telling you that is because we once had a visit on healthcare from the Samaritans, and they had one of my managers in the office, 2 people from Samaritans talking, and we had a prisoner on there who was unwell. He had any medical people watching, forgive me. I think it's called Huntington's chorea. It was a young lad. It's almost like Parkinson's and dementia that you get at an early age, but also you almost end up with like MS. You end up with muscle wastage, anger issues, this sort of thing. It's a terrible disease and it afflicts young people. But it's the memory loss. And this lad was a constant mither because he couldn't understand why he was in prison and all he wanted was to speak to his daughter. So we used to give him the Samaritan's phone. The Samaritans come in and told us we couldn't give him the phone anymore because their staff who listen at the other end of the phone were going sick. You know, they'd listen to him for an hour and a half and they'd need a break or, you know, they couldn't deal with it. So we actually had one prisoner who we weren't allowed to give the phone to. There you go.
What was he saying?
He just wanted to speak to his daughter, Amelia. He used to have a cell bell in his cell. He would press that 100 times a day. You go to the hatch, "You all right, Michael? Yeah. I want to speak to Amelia. That's his daughter, young daughter. You're in prison, Michael. Can I get you a cup of tea? Yep. You turn around, start walking away. Bell. What can I do for you, Michael? I want to see Amelia. 100 times a day. You know, to give staff a break sometimes. Samaritan's phone, it'd be on the Samaritan's phone. They told us we couldn't do that. So there you go.
Wow. And yeah, you were
You got
right,
it up.
Sam. It's called Huntington's disease. But that is
Terrible.
quite sad. Yeah. You said he was young, but he had a
28. 28. We had
Okay.
another lad and you die early with that disease.
Yeah.
We had another lad, Matthew, who is, well, he will definitely be dead now. He was only 24. He looked 24, angry. He was, to all intents and purposes, he acted and behaved like an old man with dementia. It was horrendous. And, you know, that's two lads I come across. They should never been in prison. You imagine someone with dementia being in prison. It's bad enough being in an old people's home, you know, sort of thing where people are looking after you. But
They both had a Huntington's disease, or
yeah, they were both locked up
Mm-hmm.
for basically showing violent tendencies, which is part of the disease.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so that's the reason that they're in there as well. Wow.
Yeah,
that doesn't make
and also they can become disinhibited. So you know, around the kids, possibly touch him inappropriately or act inappropriately,
or
but they don't know what they're doing.
or something. Yeah,
they don't know what they're doing. So sad, really.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, and we are nearing up the end of our hour here. Got a few minutes left, but
being quite deep today, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've changed my mindset in how I ask people questions because well, it depends on the person. I realized, and Sam, you're really really informal guy. You're really good at telling stories and stuff. So instead of like trying to go at it really structured, I've just decided to kind of go with the flow a little bit.
Freestyle,
and I think
best way,
I
mate.
think it's going way better, especially after you've gotten over get past that first interview of you know, maybe that, you know, that's the place to do those structured questions.
Yeah.
But I think we're at a point now where we're comfortable with each other enough that we can just kind of freestyle.
The thing is, you know, you start talking about Huntley, start talking about Samaritans. The stories just keep coming into my head. You know, they're all dead clear, like Michael and things like that. And then, you know, things like that, you don't realize they're still there. And Matthew, I couldn't remember that lad's name. You know, it's probably 10 years ago that I saw that lad, but his name just come back today. Can't remember his second name. But I just at the time just found, I said to one of the nurses, what's up with him? You know, because he was a young lad. And when they explained it, I just thought it was incredibly sad that we got somebody like that. So there you go.
Matthew was one of the guys with Huntington's.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So
I doubt very much he'll still be alive now. It takes people at an early age. It's a terrible disease.
Yeah, it's just too bad. And I'm definitely going to ask Pepsi Watson about his Samaritan experience and listening, because I'm actually interviewing him this weekend, Sam. So he's actually at HMP the Mount right now. So anyone listening who is interested in Pepsi, who has been following Pepsi Watson, be on the lookout for that. And I actually saw you and Chris Thrall hooked up. Is that correct, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. He's a nice guy. I find him quite interesting. So we're going to swap books. We had a bit of a chat. I don't know what it went like. I felt incredibly tired. I'm not a good sleeper. I just messaged him earlier actually because it premieres tonight and asked him whether it went all right, because you know, when we'd finished and sort of come offline and I finished speaking to him, I couldn't even remember anything we'd spoke about. So hopefully it went all right. Yeah. And you don't think I'm a dick or anything like that, because like I say,
I doubt that, Sam. I'll check it out. I'm looking forward to it. But what do you mean by you're not a good sleeper? Do you have sleep apnea or?
No, insomnia, terrible.
Oh, okay, I got you, Sam. Okay.
In the 80s, I actually went to a sleep clinic, signed up for some you know, to go somewhere, put some pads on you, check things out and that. So I can't remember. There's something like 5 types of insomnia, from sort of situational, you know, room based. So you can sleep in your own bed, but if you stop in a hotel, you can't sleep, that sort of thing. But I've got used to it now. You just get over it. So crack on. You just see more of the world.
I like that. It's a good way to look at it, Sam. And
It's the best way to look at it.
are coming to an end here. We have reached an hour of our power hour across the pond with Addy Ads, Anakin Skywalker, and Sam Samworth talking prison stories from a prison guard. Next time on Across the Pond with Sam, we will be delving into this even more. And about your book, Sam, it's currently MIA. I don't know where it is. I went to the post office yesterday. They didn't have it, but I think my apartment complex has it. They're kind of shite when it comes to giving residents their mail on time. So I got to call them today and ask them where my Strangeways book is, because
it's your mission to get some of your American guys to buy it. Spread the word.
Yeah, definitely, Sam. I will. I'll as soon as I finish it, I'll do a review, and because I've been wanting to do more book reviews on my channel, but I've just been doing interviews and stuff for Pepsi Watson updates too, and stuff. But yeah,
before you go, Addy.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam. I'll
Janet Williams here, talking about people in prison, mental health issues. So how about we talk about that? We haven't really talked about that next time.
Yeah, definitely. I got I got as much time as you do, Sam. Let's get into it. And thanks for the comment there, Janet. Please smash the like button. Yeah, but do you want to get into that next time or now, Sam?
We'll get into it next time. What day? I don't even know what day it is. What day are we on, mate?
I think it's Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday, May the 12th. So should we shoot for later this week?
Yeah, maybe Friday.
Yeah.
Fancy that?
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it. So everybody will who's tuning in to Across the Pond now, hope you guys can join us this weekend for another episode of Across the Pond with Addy Ads and Sam Samworth. Thank you all so much